All right, hello again, everyone. This is Jeff Scott from the channel at JPS-Jeff Teaches Programming. So far, I've done 3 C# videos. The first one was an intro. The second one, I showed how to install Visual Studio, and the third one, I wrote 2 console apps. But I did almost no explaining on what those console apps are, so I'd like to do that right now. You'll see in lines 1 through 8. Those are comments. Comments are basically things that you put in so that you using the program or somebody else using the program can understand what it is you're trying to do. They're not looked at by the system itself, for lack of better words. All right. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to be a little bit technical here, probably more technical than I should be, but I'll just explain this to you real quickly. All right. When you go and you start to, you say you want to run your C# program. Well, first it has to be compiled. All right. And it gets compiled basically where it goes and it converts your source code into what's called intermediate language, or IL. And it stores that stuff in what's called a DLL, for a dynamic link library, or a .exe file. All right. These intermediate language or IL statements, they're basically something that the system goes, so it converts your code into something the computer can understand. How about if we put it that way and just leave it at that? All right. Now, if we didn't want to write this would have been kind of silly, but what we could have done when we wrote these comments is I could have written them like this as well. I could have said, this is my first C# program, then had a blank line, then had it is you get the idea. This is what you use for a multiple line comment. You start it with a /*, you end it with a //. The system automatically puts these asterisks in that you see here in lines 2 through 7. Okay, you can get rid of them if you don't want them there. All right, so this is a multi-line comment. It's totally ignored by the C# compiler, which again is going to convert what we write into something the computer can understand, really something the C# software can understand and be able to run. All right, so that's a multi-line comment. If you do a //, and you'll notice I have some of those in here, that's a single line comment. All right, then next we've got a couple lines. These are both using statements, and I really and truly believe that the first using statement that's in there, the using system on line 10, isn't necessary. These using statements at the top of the program, rather, they're used to import or bring into your program things that have already been written for you. All right. So for instance, when I've got the using static system.console, somebody has already written a console application. All right, something under system that I'm able to use. And as I showed you, it's a shortcut. So rather than notice I can write right here or read line there, etc. I don't have to write system.console. Because this is a shortcut for doing that. Like I said, I think if I comment this out, I think the program will still work just fine. All right. The next thing that we have in there is a namespace. All right. Now, namespaces, for lack of better words, they're a way to organize and group things together. All right. Now, there's a lot of things, again, that are already written for you. There's a lot. There are things in C# that you can either write yourself or that have already been written for you, but most programs are a combination of the two. We'll get into things like classes and interfaces and enums, etc. All right, but you use namespaces. You use them, all right, to organize your code. So everything in this program is in something called first C underscore console app. The name that is here is always going to be the name that you gave it, except it doesn't understand the pound sign, so it replaces it with an underscore. All right. Then we've got next in line 15, all right, what you've got next then in line 15 is something that says internal class program. Now, later on in this course, much later, we'll talk about classes. All right, but a class, for lack of better words, it's a blueprint. So think of it this way for now, and don't worry about it, but just think of it this way. This is the analogy that I've always used. Imagine that where you live, across the street from where you currently live, is 100 acres of just basically vacant land. All right, so a builder comes in and buys that vacant land and says, on these 100 acres, I'm going to put up 50 homes. And we'll have streets and sewers and everything else, but I'm going to put in 50 homes. All right, the 50 homes, we're going to have 5 different house plans. You know, so the first one will look this way, the second one will look this way, whatever that is, and we don't care right now. All right, but these house plans that we're talking about right here, those are classes. They're blueprints for what a house would look like. You don't just sit there and boom, start, you know, cutting foundations down and pouring them out. You've got a blueprint for what you want to do. All right, so that's what this is. I mentioned before that C# is basically, it is a curly brace centric language. Almost everything you do is within these curly braces. So you see the namespace has its beginning and end curly braces. You see that the class has got its beginning and end curly braces, and main has got its beginning and end curly braces. All right. So I mentioned a little bit about this before in the previous lecture, but main is what's called a function. It's the starting point for your C program. All right. So it always looks to main to start the program. Main doesn't return anything, meaning it is void of a return. There's only one main. One way that you can make sure that there's only one of these is to put the word static in there. And it is possible that when you call a program, you can pass things into the program. Those things that get passed into the program are what go into these parentheses here. They're called arguments, or args for short, they're referred to as. And they're strings, and what you'll learn in a much later lecture is they're what are called an array of strings. So kind of look at it this way. When I start to explain to people what an array is, what I do is I say, imagine that you are in an apartment complex that has 8 units in it. And there's one big mailbox that's in 8 different compartments. All right, we're used to them being in compartments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, with arrays, you start with 0. So it'd be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll get much more into that later. And we've got a comment that says we're going to declare the variables. All right, now, all of these variables are of type string, which means that anything you put in it is a string. Even if I put in there for my first name, which wouldn't make sense, but if I put in there 127, it's not the number 127. It is the string 127. So if I live at 123 Main Street, all right, so if I asked what street you live on, and you say 123 Main Street, it's not 123 Main Street, it's 123. So the numbers in a string have no numeric value by default. So we've got a string for the first name, we've got a string for the last name, we've got a string for the full name. Now somewhere in my mess of things that I've got here, let's see. And I found this online. But these are numeric variables, okay? So when we're working with numbers, and we'll talk about these later, these are all the different kinds of numbers you can have. Now we're working with strings, which have no numeric value. All right. Then we have here a comment that says input first name. We've got another comment here that says input last name. And we've got another comment that says basically glue those two things together with a space between them. All right. And you'll notice here we've got right, but rather than right line, we've got right. And here it says read line. Well, right means that I want to keep the cursor on the same line I'm on. So it says, please enter your first name with a space. Then the cursor stops and it starts blinking. Whatever you type in after that, that's what goes into the read line. It gets placed into first name. Then we come back and ask you, please enter your last name. And whatever you read in there for that goes into last name. Then we concatenate. It's like adding, but technically it's not because they're not numbers. You're gluing two strings together. So I say full name should now hold a copy of the first name and a blank space and a copy of the last name. Finally, notice in here I said right, but now I say right line. So when I'm done, basically it's going to go down to a blank line. And it says hello plus the value of full name, which was our first name plus our last name. So again, I have now, the only thing I really changed in here was to comment this out. And I think it'll still work just fine. We'll find out right now. Well, it's going to be a little confused right now, so that's okay. It's got it, good. So please enter your first name, Jeff. Please enter your last name, Scott. And again, hello, Jeff Scott. It works just fine. Now, they talk here about debugging. Don't worry about that. We're going to look at that pretty soon. All right? So that's the first program. I wanted to make sure, I don't know how much time I spent, 10 or 15 minutes, 12 minutes. But I'm going to do the same thing now with the second program that we did. And that's this one. So again, we've got a comment here. This is my second program and what it's going to do. And I put a note in there. Now, you don't have to put comments in at all in programs. You also can over-comment, which you don't want to do. All right? And what I mean by over-commenting is, you know, years ago I taught at a college in Wisconsin, and I told people, I explained to them what comments were. And I had one guy who went comment crazy. And he put it on a blank line. He put a comment in there that said, this is a blank line. And I circled it and said, no, it's not. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you wrote something in there. But anytime, you know, I like to put a comment at the start of my programs so that people can understand what the program is about. Okay. And, you know, things like declaring variables to let you know. All right. And then what's going on? Boom. Now, again, these are multi-line comments here. This is the second program, but I could have come in here and done this. And I could have put in here number read in as a string. And then this number converted string to int. What I'm showing you here is I can put in single line comments too. When you put in a single line comment like this, everything from where you start the comment, the slash to the right is a comment. So this stuff in here is not comments, but in here these are comments. All right. So we'll put in here number status, which means that it's either 0, odd, or even. All right, so we're doing pretty much what we did before. We're telling you to read in a number. But when you read in a number, when you use readline, it's a string you're reading in. So that's why we use number str for number string. Then, as it says here, we're converting the number. We're parsing it. We're converting it from a string to an integer. Now this program, and I may or may not have shown this to you earlier, but if I run this and it comes, whoops, I've got to let the system know which program I want to run. So I have to right mouse click on the folder and choose Set as Startup Project. All right, so let's run this. So if I come in here now where it says please enter a number, if I put in hello, the program is going to, it breaks. It gives me what's called an exception. And an exception in programming language is not a good thing. All right, it's an exception to the norm, and it's telling me that input string was not in the correct format. It was expecting it to be a number that it was going to try to convert over to an integer, but I put hello in there, which didn't make any sense. We'll get into that, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. All right, I probably made this a little bit more advanced of a program than I should have, but if you look at this, we're saying, it's kind of like if you were just, imagine you were saying this in English. If the number we entered was 0, so here we'll say, if number inputted was 0. All right, that's what we're saying. So we could, I showed you two ways of handling this. We could have just written down on there, 0 is neither odd nor even, but we have another thing, another string in here that we're using to hold the 0, the odd, or the even. So I just put down 0 is neither odd nor even. If we get down to here, to line 40 here, that means we put in a number. The program didn't break, and it wasn't 0. So we either put in a positive number or a negative number. All right? So, is number evenly divisible by 2? All right, so try to divide the number by 2. If there's no remainder, it's even. Any whole number that you divide by 2, if it's 0, it's going to be 0, of course, but it's either going to have a remainder of 1, meaning that it's odd, or 0, meaning that it's even. So this else right here, whoops, I want to do that. All right, try that again. Is number divisible? Jeffrey. Is number evenly divisible by 2? All right. And down here, we're saying number is not evenly divisible by 2. All right? So there's, again, two ways we could have handled it. We could have just written right away, 0 is neither odd nor even, that number itself is even, or that number itself is odd. All right? We did that the first time. But then we came back and said, since we've created our own string variable that's called odd, even, or 0, which has got the status of our number, we said if it is 0, let's set that status variable to 0 is neither odd nor even. If it is divisible by 2, and let me move this over. Just trying to be consistent here with where I'm putting my comments. We're going to move this one over as well. Oops. All right. And here, if it gets down to here, the number is not evenly. So here is number evenly divisible by 0. If it gets down to here, it's not evenly divisible by 0. So you're going to say the number is odd. Now, it would work without this toString that I put in here, but this literally is taking the number that we read in and it's converting it to a string. We could have used number str right there and then we wouldn't have had to convert it. In fact, it would work even if we didn't convert it. All right? So then we write that out. So this is either going to, right there, if we put in an actual number, it's either going to print out this, 0 is neither odd nor even, or for instance, if I put in 9 or 8, the number 8 is even, and here, if I put in 9, the number 9 is odd. All right, and that's our whole program. So what I'd like to do next is to rewrite this program and to rewrite this program, but rewrite both of them and rewrite them both as graphical user interface or GUI programs. Now, when I write this, I'm going to try to keep it simple, but there's going to be so much stuff to show you that what I'll do is I'll keep it as simple as I can, and then I'll show you a few more features and a little more functionality to make it look a little better. All right? But what I'd like to do, just before I finish up, is I'm going to right mouse click on here again, and I'm going to choose Add, New Project, and I'm going to go down. Now I want a graphical user interface project, which isn't what it's called here. I'm going to go way down here, and I'm going to find Windows Form App, and I think I want the Windows Form App.NET framework. All right, make sure it says C# there. I'm going to choose that one, and I'm going to click Next. And I'll call this one, how about First C# GUI App? Yeah, I played with that before. Let me show you what I mean. I played with this before, and let's see. See, I've got GUI app. Let me just get rid of that folder. It's garbage, to be honest with you. All right, because like I said, I was just playing around. So let me go back, and now let me try that again. So I'm going to add a new project. I'm going to go down to here, and I'm going to find Windows Forms App .NET Framework with the C# little logo there. Click on that, click Next. Now I'm going to try it again. I'm going to put in First C# GUI App. And there it created it. There's nothing in there other than this is what's called a Windows form. All right, why did I do that? Well, what I want to do is I want to just go back and grab my first program, and I'm just going to grab the comment. That's it, just a comment. So I'm going to copy that. That's a comment. I call it a program prologue, and this is it here. But my code is actually in a file called program.cs. That's where my code is. So I'm going to paste that in. So now I've got that in. Now I've got the same stuff I had in here before. I don't need that using static system.console because I won't have any read lines and write lines, but I do need this line. When you're working with forms, you need using system Windows forms. Again, I don't think I'll need this one, but I'm going to comment it out in case I do. And I don't need any of these. If they're gray like this, that means they're not being used. There. Now, we'll talk about what all this stuff means later. And I'm trying to figure out why. Let's see. The name could not be found. Wow. Never saw that mistake before, but that's fine. We'll fix it. I'm not worried about this at all. I'm really not. All right, but I've got that comment in there now. Okay, maybe it needs that system statement. And it did. Okay, so it does need it on here. All right, so I've got that, but I should be able to remove these. And it should be still fine. Okay? All right, the other thing I want to do, so let me do a file save all on here. And I'm going to go back and again, right mouse click on my solution, choose Add, choose New Project. Again, I'm going to go down and find Windows.NET Forms App .NET Framework. Click Next. This one is going to be called Second C# GUI App. And again, all it has in there again is that form. All right. And again, I'm going to click on program.cs. Again, I don't need any of these these right here, these using statements, because I'm not using them. But I will come back to here. There's my second C# program. So I'm going to copy all this, copy it here, and put that in my program as well. So that was at the top here. So I now have comments in, and I've got a start to both my programs. Okay, so let me do a file save all on both on this, and I'm going to stop right now. So in the next video that I do, I will, at a minimum, I will come in here and write the form for the first GUI app. So the one that's where you put in hello, or you put in your first name and your last name, and it says hello followed by your names. Then I'll go back and do the same thing as far as writing a GUI app, where I'll be able to put in a number and it'll be either even or odd. When I first make these, both of these apps, I want to say this again, I'm going to make them as vanilla or generic and as simplistic as I possibly can. Then I'll go back and add a few more features and a little more functionality. All right, to try to make it look a little nicer. That's not going to necessarily act any nicer. That's about it for now, so I'll be back shortly.